Okay, so I saw an uproar on Twitter a few days ago talking about end of dungeon rewards in Mythic Plus and the item level that is associated with them. That was talked about recently that will be moving into Shadowlands. So basically, for those who do not know, the end of dungeon rewards from Mythic Plus dungeons, which the highest level will be that you'll be able to get an end of dungeon reward from, it will be a 15. You will be awarded an item level 210 piece of loot. From Heroic Castle Nathria, your item level will be 213 from bosses in there, which isn't historically the precedent has been the end of dungeon rewards from the hardest difficulty that basically the hardest difficulty that continues to give increasing rewards will also be equal to that of heroic. So basically there's been precedent set recently where that's going to be the same item level, and Blizzard has decided to change it up, especially also due to the fact that the last two bosses of the raid instance also have increased item level at 220 and 233. So it also has to you have to factor that in as well as something to think of whenever you're talking about gearing via Mythic Plus versus gearing via raid. So what does this actually mean for those people who want to do Mythic Plus? So as a whole, you're going to have basically worse quality loot than heroic raiders, and in general not be able to trade anything the first few weeks to those people who do raid. For example, I feel like one of the things that people did a lot previous tiers is that the first week of the patch, whenever Mythic Plus was released and Heroic were released, you would spam as many dungeons as possible and try to get the highest item level loot that you possibly could. And then the week after, once Mythic is released, you then go in and do the dungeons on the highest difficulty and get the highest item level loot that is equivalent to heroic gear. That way, that once you go in and do your heroic split or heroic run for that week, you're able to trade a large amount of heroic gear to other people because you've already acquired a bunch of stuff. And that allows you to trade some of the more important things like trinkets and weapons and stuff like that other people need. And that historically has how it's been going, but now it's going to be changing. Basically, you are no longer able to, once Mythic is released, go into these plus 15s and spam as much as you want for heroic item level loot, because they decided that they don't want you to be able to trade as much gear, especially they want you to have to raid to be able to even trade raid quality gear, or alternatively get loot from your Mythic vault, the vault at the end of the week. And basically the Great Vault, I think, and people got upset. And people have been getting upset because they feel like Mythic Plus is going to be shafted and people who only do dungeons are going to be worse off for it. And honestly, that's not even true. Just with how the Great Vault works, basically, if you complete 1, 4, and 10 number of weekly dungeons, like that many weekly dungeons, you will gain the opportunity to select another item from Mythic Plus dungeons. And so basically, it's a weekly cache, very similar to the weekly cache that we had in BFA, except it encompasses all forms of content. Basically, at 1, 5, and 8, or 1, 4, and 8 boss kills, I want to say, raid boss kills, I think, or maybe it's 1, 4, and 10 raid boss kills, something like that. You're able to get additional pieces that drop from raid at an appropriate item level, similar to what you were killing raid-wise. For PvP, it's based on how much conquest you're gaining, and for dungeons, it's the amount of dungeons you're doing, and at the level of that you're doing the dungeons. And so basically, you're able to gain the opportunity to select yourself additional items from the Great Vault. And so this is the reason that I'm not super concerned about end of dungeon rewards the way they are, and this is why I think that as a whole, Shadowlands will be better for those who are just only doing Mythic Plus. And it's because at the end of the day, do you really care about those end of dungeon rewards? But a real question that I have to ask is who is actually wearing end of dungeon gear after the removal of Titan Forging? So basically, once Titan Forging got removed, sure, at some points you were wearing corruption because the corruption was slightly stronger from end of dungeon rewards. But with the restructuring of going back to loot just being loot, you're not going to ever wear end of dungeon loot anyways. Like, especially if you're like a more competitive player, if you're doing these plus 15s like we're showing, you're not going to be wearing end of dungeon like loot. You're going to be wearing something that's slightly more high item level anyways. Because the end of dungeon rewards have always been heroic item level quality. The Great Vault rewards are the mythic quality loot, 226, right? Or which is the equivalent to the first 8 bosses item level from Castle Nathria. So 226 is the item we're looking for from the weekly Great Vault. And that's honestly the items you're looking for. And with the opportunity to be able to select more items out of the Great Vault from just only doing dungeons. So say dungeons is the only content you want to do. You're actually able to get a higher chance of getting better quality loot. And it also helps you have some sort of bad luck protection to where you don't get, I don't know, hands 3 weeks in a row like I did this tier. That was really fucking annoying, right? Like, and you guys know the struggle where you get the same slot a bunch of weeks in a row and you're like, wait, I already had a good piece in this slot. I didn't really need this. I really wish I could have gotten something else. But now there's a lot more bad luck protection to that via the Great Vault because you have the opportunity to select items. So you shouldn't be frustrated about that. There is, however, another point that could potentially be made about the system as a whole, which I've actually seen JB talk a lot about on Twitter, but I don't know if he's necessarily articulated it that well. But the basis of the argument is basically that Mythic Plus players are seen as just slightly less valuable as Raid players, and I actually think that that's kind of correct. I feel like for me, PvP and Mythic Plus is seen as almost secondary content, and Raid is the premier in-game content for Blizzard Entertainment, and they are going to reward it as such by doing things such as have the last 2 bosses from Raid drop 233 item level, right? Like, they're going to have them do more. In addition to that, they're not going to have the dungeons scale up more than plus 15. They're going to have opportunities for you to be able to gear yourself out, but they're not going to give you those options to be able to get this highest item level gear. And so I think that there is some more prestige in Raid, and it seems like the developers actually are showing that they do agree with that, because there's a lot more functional changes that they made, like some of the stuff with potions and some of the stuff with like health pots and shit like that. Like, it proves more of the point that Blizzard Entertainment cares more about the prestige of Raid and the allure of raiding more so than secondary in-game content sources such as PvP and Mythic Plus. Whether or not that's correct and that they should be doing that or not is up for debate, but that's definitely the perception that they have been giving off, especially with a lot of the decisions that they've ended up making. As a whole, I don't think that this is actually going to change. I suspect that the developers very intentionally are doing this, where they believe that the Mythic Plus and PvP stuff is definitely going to be more of a secondary factor. The Raid is always going to be just like the king of the castle, the absolute top, tippity top, and there is going to be no parity. It kind of makes me upset because I really want a structured reward system for Mythic Plus, but I don't suspect that will actually be coming. But maybe one day. Maybe one day we'll get a structured reward system for Mythic Plus that is a little bit more tangible. But in the meantime, don't be super upset about your end of dungeon rewards being lower than heroic item level stuff. It really doesn't matter that much. Be super excited about having the opportunity to get more loot via the Great Vault, especially for you people who only do Mythic Plus. It's definitely a better system as a whole. The Great Vault is substantially better. With that said, I think that's going to be it for the video today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Honestly, this is just like a talking point video. I felt like there was a little bit of back and forth and a little bit of points I wanted to make. If you guys have different opinions, do you guys believe that Blizzard not only cares about Raid, but views Raid as a more premier style of content than the other sources? Do you think that I was a little bit wrong in that accusation? Or do you think it's a little bit baseless? I want to hear you guys' thoughts down in the comments. Beyond that, I hope you guys like the video, subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one.